Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, it's been said that those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed to live them again. And I want to give you a little history lesson. I was intimately involved in the early days with Bush #1, and his chief of staff was named John Sununu, who was a brilliant man, former governor of New Hampshire. All right. There was a senator, Republican, named Warren Rudman, who was somewhat left of most of us. And what Rudman got with Sununu and said, look, I've got this guy up in New Hampshire. He's a brilliant jurist, and he's the one the president ought to pick for the Supreme Court. His name was, you remember? Souter.
Yes, yes.
Souter. Okay. So, on the strength of Sununu, those of us who didn't know any better thought, well, okay, Sununu knows what he's doing, and Souter had no record whatsoever, had no judicial philosophy, had no decisions he'd ever written. He was a stealth candidate that nobody knew anything about, who was being pushed by a senator named Warren Rudman. And Sununu, you know, said to me, he said, this guy is the man. He's a wonderful guy. He's marvelous jurist, and he'll be great. Okay, so without a lot of opposition from people like me, the Senate confirmed Judge Souter, went on the Supreme Court, where he became an absolute disaster. He was to the left of everyone. He was always on the side of the left, and I don't know what his... he was a confirmed bachelor, and I won't go beyond that, but there was some latent problems with him. But he was really a horrible judge. And I don't know whether he retired or died or what happened to him, but he's not no longer on the bench. Now, that's what happens when you get a guy just because of his, you can get more votes to get him confirmed. You have to deal with their judicial record. What have they said? What have they written? What have they said in their opinions, in their dissents? What cases have they dealt with? How broad is their grip? Now, there's one candidate out there who's got all of that, and his name is Brett Kavanaugh. He is, without question, the most superbly qualified judge we've got. Now, people will say, well, maybe we can't get all the Senate votes for him to be confirmed. Well, you've got to put him through. That's the way I say you've got to fight for this thing. If we had fought against Souter, we would have been a whole lot better off. But we let him go on the strength of Warren Rudman and John Sununu. That was it.
Well, so many times the first candidate that they put up there is kind of shot down, and then a second one comes up. Do you think they keep that in mind when they're making these decisions?
In this case, I mean, they've got control of the Senate, and Mitch McConnell has got to push this thing through. And you can't go with somebody, for example, like Hardeman, who has no judicial record to speak of at all, and say, well, he was a cab driver, he comes from the middle class and all this stuff. I mean, you don't put him in for biography. You put him in for judicial reasoning. And you've got a man who is, you know, Brett Kavanaugh, as in a dissent, the lower court wrote 6 dissents. Every single one of them was picked up by the Supreme Court as majority decision. Every one. So, I mean, here you're looking at a man who's uniquely qualified. Now, we'll see what happens, but I don't know what the president's going to choose. But I just think that given what we did with Souter, we ought to keep in mind, you don't put him in for biography. You don't put him in because some Republican senator likes them. You don't put them in because the vice president likes them. You put them in because they are prime judicial scholars. And fortunately, the last man we put in was a brilliant scholar. He breezed through. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, here's what you've got to remember. Though one of the candidates was named Moses, the Democrats would be opposed to him. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They would be opposed to anybody who was president put up. So you're going to find them fighting, and what they need to do is to pick up a few Joe Manchins. And guys like that, with that temperament, they need about 2 or 3 Democrats to vote along with them. And it's got to be. Okay.
Well, they're already looking for ways to defeat a candidate that hasn't even been named yet. Both sides know that the justice could influence the court for decades to come. Amber Strong has this look at the top candidates and the fight that lies ahead.
And then there were four.
We're very close to making a decision.
President Trump narrowing his list of potential Supreme Court nominees.
And they're excellent, everyone. You can't go wrong.
Rounding out the top four, Brett Kavanaugh, Raymond Kethledge, Amy Coney Barrett, and Thomas Hardiman. The president is said to be leaning toward Hardiman. The 53-year-old was the runner-up to Neil Gorsuch the last time the president chose a nominee. Senate Republicans say whoever the president chooses from this Supreme Final Four will be a winner.
If you're a conservative Republican, the four people named, particularly Thomas Hardiman, I'm glad he's on the list, are all winners.
But it's not going down without a fight, with Senate Democrats claiming that Roe v. Wade is at stake.
If you look at what the president said, which is he will nominate someone only if that person is committed to automatically overturn Roe v. Wade.
But Trump Supreme Court advisor Leonard Leo says the Roe v. Wade conversation is nothing more than a scare tactic.
We've been talking about this for 36 years, going all the way back to the nomination of Sandra O'Connor. And after that 36-year period, we only have a single individual on the court who has expressly said he would overturn Roe.
With Democratic leaders targeting moderate Republicans, Graham says red state Democrats may be the key to securing the nomination.
This is a nightmare for red state Democrats to oppose a highly qualified nominee, and all four of these people are highly qualified.
Either way, it's a choice that could have major implications on vulnerable Democrats come November. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Well, you know, the thing about Roe versus Wade, it was a horrible decision. It was a put-up case by the ACLU, a put-up case. It was phony plaintiffs. The whole thing was fraud. And the reasoning was Judge Blackmun, who was, again, appointed by a Republican. It was called Blackmun's abortion. It was so bad. But anyhow, it's been in there. The thing that it did was something that I knew in the early days. They federalized the matter of abortion. That should have been left to state police power. And the thing that it needs to be done, frankly, is to send it back to the states. And if the states want to argue about it and the political will is that they restrict abortion or they allow abortion, that's up to them. But to federalize it was a terrible mistake. And but I don't think in any way, shape, or form these judges are being asked about Roe versus Wade. I don't think that, but the Democrats are trying to use that as a scare tactic to get people to vote against whoever Trump puts in. Well, our CBN chief political correspondent, David Brody's joined us now. And David, what are you hearing about what Mitch McConnell is going to do in this thing?
Pat, there's so much going on right now. My phone is blowing up with text and emails, phone calls, all of that. Let's try to boil all of this down. As for Mitch McConnell, look, I think there are a couple judges that he would like to see if he had his druthers, which would be Thomas Hardiman, Raymond Kethledge. Those are the two. Why? Well, it goes to what you said at the top of the show. He's thinking they're more easily confirmable. You know, Raymond Kethledge was confirmed as an appeals court judge 97-0 on a voice vote, and Thomas Hardiman was 95-0. So, you know, in Mitch McConnell land, Senate Majority Leader, whose job is to get this nominee through, to a degree, it makes sense in his world. But as you said at the top of the show, that could be a dangerous road to go down.
Well, what about Hardiman? Does he have much of a judicial record that we know about right now?
Well, he does. I mean, he has about 10 years or so, Pat. Now, he has not weighed in specifically on abortion. However, when it comes to religious liberty, he has. He sided with the Little Sisters of the Poor. We all know about them at the appeals court level. And then what's really interesting, Pat, on religious expression, what I mean by that is students, parents coming against school districts to say, hey, I want my child to be able to bring the Bible to show and tell in a public school. He has been yes on that for the students, for the parents, and against the school districts time and time again on religious expression. And so there is a feeling in the evangelical community, at least some folks that I'm talking to, that Thomas Hardiman is actually going to be very good for evangelicals if he gets the nod. Now, Amy Coney Barrett is the one that everybody's talking about in evangelical world, but Thomas Hardiman could be a sleeper evangelical pick here, Pat.
Well, we don't really have any suitors out there. We don't have anybody that is hard left we don't know about. These are all have been vetted by the Federalist Society. Is that correct?
That's right. This comes from that list of about 25 or so. My source is telling me that all four, this is the quote, all four are confirmable, no doubt about it. So whether he goes with Amy Coney Barrett or Hardiman or Brett Kavanaugh, look, here's the thing. Brett Kavanaugh, when he came up for his appeals court hearing over a decade ago, he had about 36 votes against him. Amy Coney Barrett had 43 votes against her. So you can see how those are going to be two of the more tougher fights. I think there is some concern about Brett Kavanaugh on a few different levels. There's actually a few. One, he's a Bush guy. We've heard that before. But beyond that, I think there's some pause in the president's circle about the Obamacare decision that he came to, basically opining that there is some sort of legality that would be okay when it came to Obamacare, which kind of gave Justice Roberts the go-ahead, if you will, to make his Supreme Court decision in 2015 against or for Obamacare. So I know those are concerns within the president's inner circle, and that may blow it for Kavanaugh if he's not picked. That's if he's not picked. That might be the problem.
Well, Barrett is a dedicated Catholic and dedicated pro-life. She has a whole bunch of children, though, doesn't she? What does she have, 6 or 7 children? She adopted a handicapped child. That's going to be tough to be a judge and take care of all those kids, won't it?
Well, there's no doubt about it. She has 7 children, 5 naturally, 5 naturally, 1 special needs child, and 2 of her 7 children are adopted from Haiti. So, you know, she's got quite an interesting life story for sure. The concern about Amy Coney Barrett all along within at the president's legal team level has been this idea that she doesn't have the record that Brett Kavanaugh has. Now, unlike David Souter, her scholarly opinions have been very well thought out and very well like an originalist, like a textualist. And they believe that the scholarly articles are, in essence, proxy for the lack of cases that she has decided. Remember, she's only been on the appeals court circuit less than a year, Pat.
What do you think? They're going to need 2 or 3 Democrats to come on board, guys like Manchin of West Virginia. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, here's the situation. I mean, technically, right, they're 51-49 in the Senate. Republicans have control. Let's be honest, it's probably 50 because John McCain, due to health problems, won't be able to make it back for the vote. Now you're at 50. Mike Pence can break that tie, the vice president. So you can't afford to lose any Republicans. So if you lose Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, 2 pro-choice Republican senators, you're going to have to pick up Democrats somewhere. The 4 Democrats they are targeting, Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, and there are 2 others, Joe Donnelly and Joe Manchin as well. Those are the 4. Now, remember, if it's Amy Coney Barrett, imagine Heidi Heitkamp and Claire McCaskill in an election year, both up for re-election as red state Democrats. In other words, states that Donald Trump won, and they've got to vote against a woman. Well, you know, the Democrats talk about how they're the party for women. And then this comes along, it puts them in a pickle. You know, Pat, this is going to be really hard to predict. I'm not in the prediction business, but if you put this into the Trump mental calculator of how he does things normally, it feels like Amy Coney Barrett kind of checks most of the boxes here. I think he may not go with Kavanaugh based on the fact that he's a Bush guy. But beyond that, I think there's a lengthy record on Kavanaugh, and that might delay the process a little bit in terms of getting all the documents that Democrats need. It could delay the hearing, and therefore it could push this back until a little further down the road.
Well, one Republican senator, chairman of the committee, was talking about she, and her as if it was a done deal. I mean, is that, does he know something we don't know?
Well, you're talking about Senator Orrin-Hatch.
Yeah, right.
And, I tell you what, there was a bit of a faux pas, potentially a faux pas, where he talked about she in an article that he wrote. She is the next Supreme Court pick. So, you know, since then, everybody's kind of downplayed it. And what I'm told, the sources that I'm talking to tell me that on Sunday evening, and of course it changes by the hour, but on Sunday evening, Trump pretty much was really focusing on Thomas Hardiman and Brett Kavanaugh Amy Coney Barrett still right there. Don't get the sense that Kethledge is going to be the guy, but I'm told that it can change at a moment's notice. It wouldn't surprise me if Amy Coney Barrett's the pick here. That's the one that's going to cause the left and the Democrats and everybody to go ballistic. They're already calling her a religious fanatic. They're talking about this People for Praise group that she belongs to, which last time I checked is more an accountability Bible studies, we would know it. Yeah. But Democrats think she's probably taking blood oaths and, checking in with Harry Potter or something. I don't know what they think.
Well, we will watch with great interest as the day progresses. And David, thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat.
Well, folks, you can see coverage of the president's announcement and analysis tonight on CBNNews.com, Facebook Live, and Twitter. And we appreciate David Brody's analysis, and it's a conundrum.
Promises to be interesting.
But the thing of it, we've got 4 really top-notch conservatives in that mix, and they've all been vetted by the Federalist Society, so they're all, if you use the term strict constructionists, they're not out to remake the law and rewrite the law. So Trump is looking at a majority in the court, and then there'll be another one. I'm sure he'll have another appointee, and there'll be a solid conservative majority, and that's going to last for 30 or 40 years. It's a big-time deal. Well, turning now to a story that has captured the world's attention, rescue teams in Thailand are racing against time to free the remaining soccer players and their coach from a flooded cave. They've been trapped for more than 2 weeks. And to make matters worse, monsoon rains threaten even more flooding. Ephraim Graham has that.
The rescue began Sunday. Here, one of the first of 4 guided to safety is whisked away by emergency teams.
It's a very restricted environment, makes it challenging for even those most experienced divers, much less the kids.
Divers were forced to suspend rescue efforts late Sunday to replenish oxygen and assess the conditions. But rescue efforts are now back underway. This is the aunt of one of those rescued boys saying, "I'm glad that a lot of people came to help. A lot of government agencies are helping us. I'm so happy." The rescue mission involves more than a dozen divers, including Thai Navy SEALs. They're making their way through a rocky maze using the buddy system to guide the boys out. Each boy is surrounded by 2 divers with a line tethering each of them together. This reduces the risk of getting lost in the dark and murky water. The most challenging part of the journey to safety is said to be the very first leg. The rest is on foot, walking in muddy waters, possibly floating in others. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
It's amazing how the world has come together to see those young boys rescued. Yeah. Well, stay with CBNNews.com throughout the day for updates on this developing story.